Hello, everybody. This is Nanette Kennedy with Evolution Revolution and Humanities Team. And we are going to discuss a little bit of Chapter 16, Conversations with God, Book 3 by Neale Donald Walsch. And we had said we wanted to discuss more of this chapter at the end of the last week's call. But all of us seem to have forgotten what we really wanted to discuss, except the civilizations. Um, does that kind of put us in a place?
Yeah, I specifically like this towards the very end of this chapter, where Neale says you're using wordplay now to change things around, and God says not at all. I'm merely showing you that primitive is not necessarily pejorative. It's your judgment that makes it so. And then he goes on and he says, a certain thing in the very early stages of development, it says nothing more than that. It's nothing about right or wrong. You add those meanings. I have no judgment. Understand this. An assessment is not a judgment. It is merely an observation. What is? I want you to know that I love you. I have no judgments about you. I look at you and I see only beauty and wonder. And I think if everyone were able to look at everyone else that way, to first see the beauty and the wonder of them, and then perhaps, if necessary, have an assessment that's not a judgment, I think we could solve the problems in the world really quickly.
I agree with you. And I was at a meeting this last week in Boulder with some of the people from HT. And one of the things that came up when we were having a break time was how can you, is loving unconditionally really possible? And what you just said, Linda, made me think of this discussion because we had gotten into talking about people that have been raped, people that are being abused by other people, or if somebody assaulted you and attacked you, any number of horrific things. And how does that work when you've been, I'm going to use the word wronged? Is that a thing that means love is unconditional after you're over the event and you've forgiven? I'm curious to know what other people have to say.
Well, so this is the hardest piece of it. This right here, what you're talking about, is the absolute hardest piece, because we have to always remember that everything visual that we see is an illusion, and that there's nothing that's real other than the energy that exists, and that the only real energy is love. Everything else is some kind of lack of that energy. And so when you don't have a good, strong spiritual understanding, it's really hard to process the things that happen to us in our life, because we end up feeling like we're a victim all the time. But this is what these books are talking about, is that even in the thing that happened, there is a choice in how we can respond to it. And with the kind of spiritual practice that God and Neil are talking about, those things happen and we don't bring the judgment to them. They are just what happened, and we have a choice of how we respond to it. And most of the time what happens, because people live in separation consciousness, they bring judgment to it. They actually make it worse. They don't even realize it, but they actually make their experience of it worse than it was through their own judgment of it.
Well, and I think too, good answer. If you're in such a state of fear that you can't mobilize yourself back to a center place, that's where you need to dig deeper into your spirituality. Go to counseling and help yourself out of the hole. Because you're right, it does make it worse. And the one thing I've never liked is the whole victim thing. I get it. I know why people go there. I mean, they can't dig themselves out. But I think there's a point. There's going to be on the Global Oneness Day, October 24th, there will be a panel called the Women of Oneness. And this is one of those questions I want to pose to the panel, because I think, and we may have discussed this on this call, I don't know which book, but it's real easy to, and I want to say especially for women, it's real easy to get caught up in doormat, confusing oneness with not setting your boundaries. And because I think we all need to set our boundaries, and we need to do it in a strong way. But are we not making a judgment if we're saying, you're crossing my boundaries? How do we do that?
I think you just have to be clear about what's acceptable to you. And if it's not acceptable to you, it's not acceptable to you. And, sometimes you just have to love even family members from a distance, right? Like they're so dysfunctional and, like you can still care about them, but you can't let their dysfunction slow you down. And it's like what Patty Coder-Roble says, look at how far we've come in the last 30 years in terms of computing. And, we've got to get rid of these old floppy disks. And women are programmed, and men are programmed too, incorrectly, right from the get-go. They're programmed not to feel when we live in a feeling universe. And women are programmed to stop their feelings, because I think the way out of it is through compassion, right? And non-attachment. And it's hard because we're programmed to react and not to respond, right? We're programmed to get ourselves stuck in time when time doesn't really exist, right? There's only movement. And so I think compassion for myself, that's what I try and practice, is self-compassion. And if I get triggered, I get triggered, and it's okay. It's okay to get triggered. I do get triggered.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah. And I think the basic, it comes down to a basic lack of self-love. So we're not taught to love ourselves first. So how does a woman understand what the boundaries are? How are we supposed to know when we're not taught that self-love is really the first most important piece of it? And so we don't love of ourselves, and we're taught quite often that our place in the world is to serve others. And so then we get into these situations where someone is exerting their force over us, and it becomes very confusing because we don't know that we should be taking care of ourselves first. We think that we're somehow supposed to care about other people, and it gets very muddy. And then quite often men take advantage of those situations. I'm speaking specifically sort of towards that rape scenario, but this is a broader issue. Our lack of self-love and understanding who and what we are is really, I think, where the problem really starts.
And learning to say no. I mean, when I was in India 20 years ago, every time Scott left, like our driver tried to get money from me. There's so much manipulation, right? And it's just like, get off my breast. I'm not your mother.
Well, and I think too that while you're in that situation, like, obviously if somebody was raped last night, you wouldn't go to them today and say, well, this just was all an illusion, because that's where the compassion comes in. Because
Exactly.
but Neil calls it the spiritual bypass, is when you don't even acknowledge the pain that the person is going through, which is very real at that moment. And there used to be a saying a few years ago that people overused, and it just drove me insane. It's like, wow, I got really sick yesterday. And then they said, well, I wonder why you brought that onto yourself. And I thought, that's not what I was thinking. I was thinking, maybe, whatever I was thinking, but to throw it back as though it's a fault of our own, it is not beneficial to anyone.
Someone who's been raped or someone who served in the military, so many people have post-traumatic stress disorder. If you've been raped, you've been traumatized. You've been traumatized, and you have to have compassion for the trauma that being has experienced. It's an act of violence. I have a neighbor who, served in Kosovo, and I mean, he loves cats and he'll do anything for cats, but he has post-traumatic stress disorder when it comes to people and trusting people.
Were you done, Christine? Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, I am.
Okay. Yeah, that's one of the worst misunderstandings of New Age thinking. This notion that when you get sick or when something happens to you, that you created it. Yeah, you did, but everybody else involved also did. This is not I'm the only person here and everything revolves around me. And a lot of New Age thinking gets a little screwy that way, and it makes you think that. And it's really not the case. What's really the case is this is all a co-creation. Every single one of us is participating in this grand illusion that exists. And so when something traumatic happens to someone, and my own temptation was to sit here and question myself. I'm kidding you. I'm questioning my own self about, well, why did you bring that into your realm? And I had to stop myself and go, I'm not the only one here. My other employee was sitting here wishing for an employee that she could be good friends with. Well, guess what? She got what she wished for. She got this woman, and they became very good friends. And yet, she hated working with her because she was a terrible coworker. And she's actually glad that I ended up firing her, because it really was not turning into be a good summer. And when you look at it, it's like, well, we co-created this. I wanted someone that would do this, this, and this. You wanted someone that would do this, this, and this. And through that, and then out there in the world is a person who wanted to come here and do this, this, and this. And where it overlapped, it worked really well. And then there's other places where it didn't overlap and it didn't work at all. And so we co-created this experience that all three of us and everyone else around us went through. It's all divine because it can't be anything other than that, because everybody participating is divine, whether they're acting divine or not. Everything is divine. And so you come away from these moments, not so much, I mean, the thing is not, and I think Neil talks about this too, not so much why did it happen, but what are you going to do in response to it? In any given moment, it's the what that makes the difference, not the why. And so, you know, if you got sick, you know, yeah, maybe you did you created that, but then other things co-created it too. The person with the germ had to show up to get the germ.
Yep.
You know, you didn't manifest the germ, you didn't make the germ up. So it's like, you know, it's a much, and that's where, you know, a lot of this new age stuff is really, it doesn't work because people don't have the broader understanding that everything's divine. And there's something a lot bigger going on here than just our individual experiences.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So to develop your faith muscle is important.
And you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of my favorite Christmas movie of all time, It's a Wonderful Life. And it shows you that if you pull one person out, everything's going to change. You know, when he says, I wish I'd never been born, he goes, well, poof. Clarence, I think, was the angel's name. It said, well, you weren't born. This isn't your house. You never bought it. You never met, you know, whatever. But when I think about that, that's like the reverse of what you were just discussing, Linda. It's like all those people in that wonderful life were co-creating together. But if you pulled one person out of it, it alters everything. And anyway, I just thought that was very, very interesting and well said, Linda.
You know, I'm taking Neil's master class that he's teaching right now.
Yep.
And one of the best takeaways so far has been this statement that he made of, your life isn't about you. Your life is about everyone you touch and how you touch them. And I just think that that's such a powerful framing of how to move through life.
That is really powerful. And if you think about it, when we are, you know, whether we're at the grocery store or in traffic, you know, and I'm one of those people who will always stop to let somebody cross the street. I will always, you know, let more people come out of the grocery store than the people behind me would like me to be doing. But I feel like these are simple ways, you know, just in your everyday life where we can all become more compassionate. And, you know, and I let people go at a stop sign when it's not their turn. I'll just, you know, say, go ahead and go. But I always like the looks on their faces are always so grateful. You know, it's like, thank you, you know. So it is in our everyday experience of all the people we touch, no matter how we touch them. Though I could admit I hung up on a salesperson yesterday when they got my cell phone number. I just heard them say, you're interested in remortgaging your house. And I went, click. That probably didn't make them feel good, but I'm sure they're used to it. I used to do those kind of sales myself. But anyway, over.
I just got a poem. I'll just read you two sentences, which is exactly what Neil was talking about and what Linda quoted, that your life is not about yourself. Would that be okay if I read it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Please.
This is talking to God, who's called the Beloved. At thy command alone will I carry out the pilgrimage of life, for the love of all created by thee and for thy glory.
That's beautiful.
Thank you, Shabana.
Yep.
Thank you, Shabana.
Yes, thank you for sharing that.
I think it's about gratitude that you just
Hello?
shared, Nanette. You know,
Right.
when you said that people look grateful because you stopped everything to give them a chance.
Mm-hmm.
There's no bigger form of love than to put someone else ahead of you, literally. And everyone's sort of elbowing each other out of the way. So for you to act differently, Nanette, is pretty amazing.
Well, thank you. And it really is a matter of habit. You know, so you get into the habit. And I don't know if I've told everybody on this call, but I have the words love written on my passenger backseat windows. So I'm like the Dr. Emoto, I think was his name, who put love on the bottle of water and not so positive words on other ones. I envelop myself in this little thing with love. And also, you have to stay in your integrity. You cannot be flipping people off, raising your fists, or doing all that stuff if you've got love written on the sides of your car. And that's one of the things that's helped me stay in my integrity. And I've been doing it for years. I used to write quotes on the back of my back window that were my favorite quotes. And I would get people all the time, you know, passing me with a thumbs up. And but there's just different ways we can take care of ourselves. Anne, were you going to say something?
Hey. Hi, everybody. How are you today?
We're good.
I was just thinking of my different hits off of listening to all this, which is really interesting because basically what I'm hearing is we're just talking about the daily practice of love and gratitude. And when I hear integrity, it's not because it's something to do, it's because that's who I am. And I own that. And when I recovered from the liver disease and all that, and I was given my life back, all that I really felt and see is that what she said about your life really isn't about you. Because I didn't do this. It's like I was given the gift to be here when I didn't think I would be anymore. So it really isn't my life, is how I feel a lot of the time. And it's like, well, if it isn't my life, you know, is it? Or what's really making things happen? And the thing that I feel that we're talking about is human kindness and mercy and compassion, to understand that it isn't exactly what you think you see. It never really is the way it is. So how do you learn to see the truth of things? And it's kind of like, what am I turning toward, or what am I turning away from? And if I really am turning toward the love and the kindness and the compassion and the mercy, then everything else I have to recognize as a sign is simply a sign saying, oops, you turned away, turn back. And that's the only teaching that life may give me, is my perception of being able to wake up enough. I don't know, does any of that make sense?
Yes, it does.
That's my hit on it.
No, thank you. I think it does make sense, and it's nice that we're actually talking about, you know, what we, you know, how we all are, how we are all.
Our heart.
Yeah.
We're talking from the heart.
Yes.
It's where our hearts are.
Yep.
Where we're unified in heart and in God.
Yes.
Thus conversations with him.
Yeah. Thus our conversations. Well, I think the thing that's nice about this talk we've been having is that it's given everybody, a chance to speak up or, to think about these things. And what I'm thinking is, I'm going to guess, but when they were talking about different civilizations, I've always thought, I think it was last week or the week before, when I would look up at the sky and I would just think it's so vast and it's so eternal. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. And growing up, I don't know when I really adopted the idea that, well, of course there's other beings out there. Just by the size of our universe. I mean, a universe. So it doesn't surprise me that God and Neil are talking about the more highly evolved beings. And what you said, Linda, at the beginning, that it's not a pejorative to say primitive. And, there's going to be people ahead of us, or beings ahead of us, and beings not as developed as we may be. But I sure hope there's not a lot of people that are less developed than we are. A lot of beings, because
We're very young.
I think we're the bottom of the barrel, really.
Yeah.
We're very, very young. We're like newborns. We're like little godlings, and we're just learning how to walk.
I like the word visionaries. What are we envisioning?
Yes.
It's
I
you
just
seem
like
to have a very open table.
Yeah.
uh,
Shabana?
Sorry, I hope I'm not interrupting you, Anne.
okay, no, God.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to get back to something that Kirsten said
Okay.
in last week's call. Essentially, she just commented on the power of this meeting.
Mhm.
And I feel it. But today in this same internet, YouTube, whatever, that I was listening to, the one that I quoted this poem from, it's an ancient poem. What I heard is that cathedrals or like Chartres or Stonehenge and the Mayan temples and the Egyptian temples, blah, 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 all of these sacred geometry, physical monuments that can, the Great Wall or whatever, that have been epic over the millennia, are now being replaced by groups such as this one, which meet with the specific objective of uniting hearts in the remembrance of God. That's the short word for whatever you want to call the source.
Mhm.
So these...
Or the sacred, yes.
Exactly. It doesn't matter, you could call it Bob or Alice. It's still the same. The idea is that our hearts have been pulled together. I think it's voluntary, but I'm not sure.
I like that.
Yeah.
But the objective, or whatever it is that we're achieving here, as ephemeral as it is far more powerful than big centers of worship because our hearts are transmitting the love.
Absolutely.
I completely agree.
I think that the way I like to describe it, and I've just started describing it this way recently, is it's about becoming intentional. So when you talk about like those large gatherings of people, many times what was functioning there was one person that everyone would follow or gather around, or in essence worship them, much like we've done with Christ, instead of living intentionally the way Christ was trying.
That was weird.
We instead put him on a pedestal and just worship him. And so, so I think what you're describing, Shabana, is this shift of groups of people gathering with the purpose of becoming intentional in living from their hearts. And that's really sort of the grass movement that needs to take hold. If
That is the movement. That is taking
Yeah.
hold.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
that's just putting the nail on what's happening as I hear you. That is what's happening.
yeah, yeah.
That's what's being unveiled. And yeah, when I didn't mean before, there's a pun on words here, which is, I was just trying to lighten it up. The pun on words being is that we're looking to the light, is how I feel. It's about bringing in the light.
Yeah, it is. Definitely is.
So, and you know why angels can fly? Because they take themselves lightly. Excuse me. It's my mom's 95th birthday. I've got to get this call. I'll be
Okay.
right back.
All right.
You know, I have a circle format that I use called Love by Light, and light is an acronym for luminary initiates gathered here together.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good one. Actually, you should write that down and put it in the chat window.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a whole website on it.
Oh,
You post on that website. I read them, Linda.
Well, that's the, I have a group I have a page, is it a page or a group in Facebook? Maybe it's a page or a group. It's a group in Facebook called Love by Light.
Love by Light.
You're not in it?
I don't think I'm in
I'll
it.
have
but
to
I
send you an
post
invite.
from it.
Linda, you're going to have to be quiet because I've been taking notes all along and I'm getting you up on the pedestal and, Jesus better watch out.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
in the name of Linda.
Yeah, that came.
Okay.
Yeah, this structure came through to me a couple of years ago, Love by Light, with light being luminary initiates gathered here together.
That's a really good one. I always wonder how people come up with these things. I mean,
I didn't come up with that.
Oh, you didn't?
Jesus came up with that.
Oh,
Somebody
well.
else came up with that.
Now you tell me.
That's too funny.
I'm just the channel.
Yep. Well, now I forgot what I was going to say, but it doesn't matter. I've been having a great discussion here. Now, since we've got 20 minutes left, do we want to just keep discussing, or do we want to go ahead and start chapter 18?
17.
I'm 17, I'm sorry.
Yeah, 20 minutes is a good length of time.
Okay. And Linda, you might want to turn off your screen because you've been freezing up a little bit
Okay.
when you're reading.
Okay. Yeah, that was why I tried to attach by my phone, but the signal wasn't cooperating today. So,
You can start whenever you're ready.
okay. Okay. So the very last thing that God was saying in chapter 16 is your grandest ideas are yet unexpressed and your greatest vision unlived. But wait, look, notice, the days of your blossoming are at hand. The stalk has grown strong and the petals are soon to open. And I tell you this, the beauty and fragrance of your flowering shall fill the land, and you shall yet have your place in the garden of the gods. Chapter 17, Neil. Well, now that's what I want to hear. That's what I came here to experience. Inspiration, not degradation. You are never degraded unless you think you are. You are never judged or made wrong by God. Well, a lot of people don't get that idea of a God who says there is no such thing as right and wrong and who proclaims that we'll never be judged. Well, make up your mind. First, you say I'm judging you, then you're upset because I'm not. I know. It's all very confusing. We're all very complex. We don't want your judgments, but we do. We don't want your punishments, yet we feel lost without them. And when you say, as you did in the other two books, I will never punish you, we cannot believe that. And some of us almost get mad about that. Because if you're not going to judge and punish us, what will keep us walking the straight and narrow? And if there's no justice in heaven, who will undo all of the injustice on earth? Why are you counting on heaven to correct what you call injustice? Do not the rains fall from heavens? Yes. And I tell you this, the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. But what about the quote, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord? I never said that. One of you made that up and the rest of you believed it. Justice is not something you experience after you act a certain way, but because you act a certain way. Justice is not an act, not a punishment. Justice is an act, not a punishment for an act. I see that the problem with our societies is that we seek justice after an injustice has occurred, rather than doing justice in the first place. Right on. You've hit the nail on the head. Justice is an action, not a reaction. Do not, therefore, look to me to somehow fix everything in the end by imposing some form of celestial justice in the afterlife. I tell you this, there is no afterlife, only life. Death does not exist, and the way you experience and create your life as individuals and as a society is your demonstration of what you think is just. And in this, you do not see the human race as very evolved, do you? I mean, if the whole of evolution were placed on a football field, where would we be? On the 12-yard line? You're kidding. No. We're on the 12-yard line of evolution? Hey, you've moved from 6 to 12 in the past century alone. Any chance of us ever scoring a touchdown? Of course, if you don't fumble the ball again. As I've said, this isn't the first time your civilization has been at this brink. I want to repeat this because it is vital for you to hear this. Once before on your planet, the technology you developed was far greater than your ability to use it responsibly. You're approaching that same point in human history again. It's vitally important that you understand this. Your present technology is threatening to outstrip your ability to use it wisely. Your society is on the verge of becoming a product of your technology rather than your technology being a product of your society. When a society becomes a product of its own technology, it destroys itself. Why is that? Can you explain that? Yes. The critical issue is the balance between technology and cosmology, the cosmology of all life. What do you mean by the cosmology of all life? Simply put, it is the way things work, the system, the process. There is a method to my madness, you know. I was hoping there was. And the irony is that once you figure out that method, once you begin to understand more and more of how the universe works, you run a greater risk of causing a breakdown. In this way, ignorance can be bliss. The universe itself is a technology. It is the greatest technology. It works perfectly on its own. But once you get in there and start messing around with the universal principles and universal laws, you run the risk of breaking those laws. And that's a 40-yard penalty. A major setback for the home team. Yes. So are we out of our league here? You're getting close. Only you can determine whether you're out of your league. You'll determine that with your actions. For instance, you know enough about atomic energy now to blow yourselves to kingdom come. Yes, but we're not going to do that. We're smarter than that. We'll stop ourselves. Really? You keep proliferating your weapons of mass destruction the way you've been going, and pretty soon they'll get into the hands of somebody who will hold the world hostage to them or destroy the world trying. You're giving matches to children, then hoping they won't burn the place down, and you've yet to learn how to use matches yourself. The solution to all this is obvious. Take the matches away from the children, then throw your own matches away. But it's too hard to expect a primitive society to disarm itself. And so nuclear disarmament, our only lasting solution, appears to be out of the question. We can't even agree to on nuclear testing. We are a race of beings singularly unable to control ourselves. And if you don't kill yourself with your nuclear madness, you'll destroy your world with your environmental suicide. You are dismantling your home planet's ecosystem, and you continue to say that you're not. As if that weren't enough, you're tinkering with the biochemistry of life itself. Cloning and genetically engineering, not doing so with sufficient care to have this be a boon to your species, but threatening instead to make it the greatest disaster of all time. If you are not careful, you will make the nuclear and environmental threats look like child's play. By developing medicines to do the work that your bodies were intended to do, you've created viruses so resistant to attack that they stand poised to knock out your entire species. Okay, you're getting me a little scared here. Is all lost then? Is the game over? No. But it's fourth and 10. It's time to throw a Hail Mary, and the quarterback is looking around for receivers in the clear. Are you clear? Are you able to receive this? I'm the quarterback, and the last time I looked, you and I were wearing the same colored jersey. Are we still on the same team? I thought there was only one team. Who's on the other team? Every thought which ignores our oneness, every idea which separates us, every action which announces that we are not united. The other team is not real, yet it is a part of your reality, for you have made it so. If you are not careful, your own technology, that which was created to serve you, will kill you. Well, right now I can hear some people saying, but what can one person do? They start by dropping that what can one person do stuff. I've already told you There are hundreds of books on this subject. Stop ignoring them. Read them. Act on them. Awaken others to them. Start a revolution. Make it an evolution revolution. Isn't that what's been going on for a long time? Yes and no. The process of evolution has been going on, going forever, but of course. But now that the process is taking a new twist, there's a new turn here. Now you have become aware that you are evolving. Not only that, you are evolving, but how? Now you know the process by which evolution occurs and through which your reality is created. Before, you were simply an observer of how your species was evolving. Now you are a conscious participant. More people than ever before are aware of the power of the mind, their interconnectedness with all things, and their real identity as a spiritual being. More people than ever are living from that space, practicing principles that invoke and produce specific results, desired outcomes, and intended experiences. This truly is an evolution revolution, for now larger and larger numbers of you are creating consciously the quality of your experience, the direct expression of who you are, and the rapid manifestation of who you choose to be. That's what makes this such a critical period. That is why this is such a crucial movement. For the first time in your presently recorded history, although not for the first time in human experience, you have both the technology and the understanding of how to use it to destroy your entire world. You can actually render yourselves extinct. These are the exact points made by a book by Barbara Marx Hubbard called Conscious Evolution. Yes, that is so. It's a document of breathtaking sweep with wondrous visions of how we can avoid the dire outcomes of previous civilizations and truly produce heaven on earth. You probably inspired it. I think Barbara might say that I had a hand in it. You said before that you've inspired hundreds of writers, many messengers. Are there other books that we should be aware of? Way too many to list here. Why not conduct your own search? Then make a list of the ones that have particularly appealed to you and share that with others. I have been speaking through authors, poets, and playwrights from the beginning of time. I have placed my truth in the lyrics of songs and on the faces of paintings, in the shapes of sculptures, and in every beat of the human heart for ages past, and I will for ages to come. Each person comes to wisdom in a way that is most understandable, along a path that is most familiar. Each messenger of God derives truth from the simplest moments and shares it with equal simplicity. You are such a messenger. Go now and tell your people to live together in their highest truth. Share together their wisdom. Experience together their love, for they can exist in peace and harmony. Then will yours too be an elevated society, such as those that we have been discussing. So the main difference between our society and a more highly evolved civilizations elsewhere in the universe is this idea we have of separation. Yes, the first guiding principle of advanced civilization is unity, acknowledgement of the oneness and the sacredness of all life. And so what we find in all elevated societies is that under no circumstances would one being willfully take the life of another of its own species against its will. No circumstances? None. Even if it were being attacked, such a circumstance would not occur within that society or species. Okay, perhaps not within the species, but what about from without? If a highly evolved species were attacked by another, it is a guarantee that the attacker would be the lesser evolved. Indeed, the attacker would be essentially a primitive being. For no evolved being would attack anyone. I see. The only reason a species under attack would kill another would be that the attacked being forgot who it really is. If the first being thought it was its corporal body, its physical form, then it might kill its attacker, for it would fear the end of its own life. If, on the other hand, the first being understood full well that it was not the body, it would never end the corporal existence of another, for it would never have a reason to. It would simply lay down its own corporal body and move into the experience of its non-corporal self. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Well, exactly. The writers of what you call your science fiction are often leading you to greater truth. I've got to stop here. This seems directly at variance with what was said in Book 1. What was that? Book 1 said that when someone is abusing you, it does no good to allow the abuse to continue. Book 1 said that when acting with love, include yourself among those you love. And the book seemed to say, do whatever it takes to stop the attack on you. It even said that war was okay as a response to attack, and this is a direct quote, despots cannot be allowed to flourish, but must be stopped in their despotism. It also says that choosing to be godlike does not mean you choose to be a martyr, and it certainly does not mean you choose to be a victim. Now you're saying that highly evolved beings would never end the corporal life of another. How can these statements stand side by side? Read the material in Book 1 again, closely. My responses there were all given and must be considered within the context you created, the context of your question. You read your statement on the bottom of page 127 in Book 1. In that statement, you allow as to how you are not now operating at the level of mastery. You say that other people's words and actions sometimes hurt you. Given that this is so, you asked how best to respond to these experiences of hurt or damage. My responses are all to be taken within that context. I first of all said, the day will come when the words and actions of another will not hurt you. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi, you will experience no damage even when someone is killing you. This is the level of mastery that has been reached by the members of societies I am now describing. The beings in these societies are very clear who they are and who they are not. It is very difficult to cause one of them to experience being damaged or hurt, least of all by placing their corporal body in danger. They would simply exit their body and leave it for you if you felt the need to hurt it so much. The next point I made in my response to you in Book 1 is that you react to the way you do to the words and actions of others because you have forgotten who you are. But I say right here, that is all right. That is part of the growth process. It is part of evolution. Then I make a very important statement. All during your growth process, you must work at the level at which you are, the level of understanding, the level of willingness, the level of remembrance. Everything else I have said there is to be taken within that context. I have even said on page 129, I assume for the purpose of the discussion that you are still seeking to realize, make real, who you truly are. Within the context of a society of beings who do not remember who they really are, the responses I gave you in Book 1 stand as given. But you didn't ask me those questions here. You asked me here to describe the highly evolved societies of the universe. Not only with regard to the subject at hand, but with regard to all other topics we will cover here, It will be beneficial if you do not see these descriptions of other cultures as criticisms of your own. There are no judgments here, nor will there be any condemnation if you do things differently, react differently than beings who are more evolved. So what I have said here is that the highly evolved beings of the universe would never kill another sentient being in anger. First, they would not experience anger. Second, they would not end the corporal experience of any other being without that being's permission. And third, to answer specifically your specific inquiry, they would never feel attacked, even from outside their own society or species, because to feel attacked, you have to feel that someone is taking something from you, your life, your loved ones, your freedom, your property, or possessions, something. And a highly evolved being would never experience that, because a highly evolved being would simply give you whatever you thought you needed so badly that you were prepared to take it by force, even if it cost the evolved being its corporal life, because the evolved being knows she can create everything all over again. She would quite naturally give it all away to a lesser being who did not know this. Highly evolved beings are therefore not martyrs, nor are they victims of anyone's despotism. Yet it goes beyond this. Not only is the highly evolved being clear that he can create everything all over again, he's also clear that he doesn't have to. He's clear that he needed none of it to be happy to survive. He understands that he requires nothing exterior to himself, and that the himself, which he is, has nothing to do with anything physical. Lesser evolved beings and races are not always clear about this. Finally, the highly evolved being understands that she and her attackers are one. She sees the attackers as a wounded part of herself. Her function in that circumstance is to heal all wounds, so that the all in one can again know itself as it really is. Giving away all that she has would be like giving yourself an aspirin.
And let's pause there.
Okay.
That is a powerful, powerful. This is just a powerful chapter.
Yep. I love it.
Yep.
We've only got another page or so. Can we finish it today or not?
Well, that's true. We can do that. I didn't realize we were that close to
Yeah,
the
we're
end.
right. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, for those who can stay, that'd be great. And then if you can't stay, you'll hear the recording.
Thanks.
Yep.
Neil, whoa, what a concept. What an understanding. But I need to go back to something you said earlier. You said that highly evolved beings, let's abbreviate that as HBS from here on. It's a long name to have to use over and over again. Good. Well, you said that Hebes would never end the corporal experience of another being without that being's permission. That's right. But why would one being give another being permission to end its physical life? Well, there could be any number of reasons. It might offer itself as food, for instance, or to serve some other necessity like stopping a war. Well, this must be why, even in our own cultures, there are those who would not kill any animal or food or hides without asking the spirit of that being for permission. Yes, this is the way of your Native Americans, who would not even pick a flower, an herb, or a plant without having this communication. All of your indigenous cultures do the same. Interestingly, there are those tribes and cultures that call you primitive. Oh man, you're telling me I can't even pick a radish without asking if it's okay? Well, you can do anything you choose to. You asked me what the Hebes would do. So Native Americans are highly evolved beings? as with all races and species. Some are and some are not. It's an individual thing. As a culture, though, they have reached a very high level. The cultural myths which inform much of their experience are very elevated. But you have forced them to mix their cultural myths with your own. Oh, wait a minute. What are you saying? The red man was a savage? That's why we all had to kill them by the thousands and put the rest in land prisons and we call reservations? Why, even now we take their sacred sites and put golf courses on them. We have to, otherwise they might honor their sacred sites and remember their cultural stories and perform their sacred rituals, and we can't have that. I get the picture. No, really, why? If we hadn't taken over and tried to erase their culture, they might have impacted ours. Then how would we have wound up? We'd be respecting the land and the air, refusing to poison our rivers, and then where would our industry be? The whole population would probably still be walking around naked with no shame, bathing in the river, living off the land, instead of crowding into high-rises and condominiums and bungalows and going to work in the asphalt jungle. Why, we'd probably still be listening to ancient wisdom teachings around a campfire instead of watching TV. We would have made no progress at all. Well, fortunately, you know what's good for you.
Thank you for reading.
Thank you very much.
And thank
You're
you, Christine, for pointing out there was only another minute or so left for the reading. I mean, for the pages. Well, I think we have much to discuss about this chapter next time. And anyway, thanks everybody for being here. Angela.
Thank you. And I won't
Sarah.
be here next week. I'm in the Muskokas at a family gathering, so I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay.
All right.
All right. We will
Bye,
see you then.
Yeah.
Bye, Shabana.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Bye,
Sarah.
Linda.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Linda.
Yep.
Bye,
Love
Sarah.
everybody. Bye.
Bye, everybody.